Thanks for tuning in to My Valley, His Victory, hosted by me, Mackenzie Smith, where I interview Christians who love the outdoors and have walked through valleys in their lives. In a world of highlight reels and surface-level relationships, we all have faced hardships. I believe our experiences can be encouraging to others if we have the courage to be vulnerable. 2 Corinthians 1 says, "The Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God." My goal is to inspire you to come to the Creator through His creation and connect you with Christians who have been through similar experiences. I pray that this podcast encourages you if you are in a valley and pushes you to share how God has turned your past valley into His victory. This episode is brought to you by Highlander USA. Highlander USA is the adventure of a lifetime. It is a hiking event held in Big Bear, California and Kalispell, Montana, with formats from 1 day to 5 days. If you are interested in hiking or backpacking and being around those who love the outdoors, look no further than Highlander USA. Use code KENZIE20 for 20% off your 2024 registration. I hope to see you there. On today's episode of My Valley, His Victory, we have Taylor Hutcheson. She is a content creator in the outdoor travel industry. She travels to get outside in prettier places and wants to help and inspire others to do the same. She travels primarily around North America in her blue Toyota Tacoma, but has plans to travel out of the country in 2024. Perhaps one of her favorite places she's traveled has been to Alaska, an absolutely incredible experience. Her faith is at the center of everything she does. She loves sharing positivity and faith moments in all the places she travels to. Outside of traveling, she is a single mom to an awesome 4-year-old daughter and German Shepherd, who's basically a child, if we're being honest. They go with her on the majority of her trips. Thanks so much for being with us today, Taylor.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I know I gave the listeners a little bit about you, but if you want to go ahead and share just a little bit more about yourself and who you are.
Yeah, so I'm Taylor. I'm based in North Georgia. I get asked about this a lot because I'm always traveling out west. So people are like, where do you live? And I'm like, Georgia. And they're like, shocked. I live in North Georgia. I feel like I should have been in the PNW maybe one day. Yeah, I'm a single mom. I have a German Shepherd and a 4-year-old, and we go on all kinds of adventures. I do a lot of travel with him, like most of my camping adventures are with them, and I just love sharing about it on Instagram and kind of like encouraging people to get outside and explore more of like what could be in their own backyard. And that's a big part of like what I do.
Definitely. I've noticed that you do a little bit of overlanding. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, I do a lot of that. That's like how I afford to travel, is because I could be like self-sufficient in my truck. I couldn't imagine it any other way.
Yeah, for those of our listeners that may not know what that is, can you tell them a little bit about it?
Yeah, so basically overlanding is like vehicle-based travel, like being self-sufficient out of your vehicle, which for a lot of people, like they perceive it as like, oh, you gotta like get these crazy lift kits and put these bumpers on it and do all this crazy stuff. But ultimately, like in my mind, it's, can you live out of your vehicle? Like, do you have a way to sleep? Do you have a way to make food? Do you have a way to like store your stuff? Good, you're set. You're overlanding now. Like you're traveling out of your vehicle and you're being self-sufficient and you're able to like live on the road for anything over like a week or two.
Yeah, I think so many people think of overlanding and like you said, you have to have all of these super expensive things and you have to have a certain rig and you have to have all these different things. In reality, just like you said, it's just kind of being able to get to remote places and being able to sustain yourself once you get there. And, you know, I think that's kind of true about a lot of things in the outdoors. I think a lot of people freeze because they're like, oh, well, I don't have this or I don't have this. And it's like a lot of times we can get outside with a lot of what we already have.
Exactly. I mean, when I started overlanding, like I had like a cheap little block lift kit and like just some all-terrain tires, and I used clear plastic bins from Walmart, and that's how I got out. Like and I spent like $20 on a camp stove. Like it wasn't anything crazy. And now my truck's built like to do more because I also got into like the off-roading side, but like it's so much more than like all of that. Like you could do it so simply if you really wanted to.
Yeah, definitely. So we talked a little bit about overlanding. What are some of your other favorite outdoor activities that take you all over the country?
Hiking. Like I love like being like using my feet and like climbing mountains or going to explore these other places. I love hiking. I've done some off-roading too, kind of like what I mentioned, but just like in my mind, it's separate from overlanding. Like some people put them together. For me, it can be separate, but I do like off-roading, hiking. I'd love to get into rock climbing, but that's not something I'm doing yet. One day.
Yeah, one day. I think we all have those things. It's like climbing to me is one of those things you need to know someone to do it. It's not kind of one of those things you can just like trial and error.
Yeah. Well, I've done like some of it before, but I've never like gone into like the outdoors and done it. I've only been in like gyms, and I'm kind of like, that's a little daunting. I don't know yet.
Same. Same. Only ever climbed in a gym, and it's probably what it's going to be for the next couple of years. So between overlanding and hiking, do you have a favorite, or do you just love them both equally?
It's like hard because I get different kicks out of each one. So like for overlanding for me is like getting to those remote places and like setting up camp. Like I love like being in a beautiful campsite. Like so I've like some of my best memory like camp memories are when I'm like driving somewhere really remote and I like get to just like set up my rooftop tent and like make a little campfire or not, depending on like where I'm at. But just like getting to enjoy the scenery at camp, like that's fun. But I don't know, hiking's fun too because then you're getting to these higher elevations that like your truck can't go to, and then you're viewing all these other things. I don't know, I feel like they're so unique. Like I do one to do the other. Like they go hand in hand for me.
Yeah, I agree. I feel very similarly about the two. Do you have a favorite place that you've been to, whether it's hiking or overlanding, and a place that just really sticks out?
I mean, I could answer these like separately, like in like little pieces. I guess like the favorite place I've ever been recently enough that I could remember it in like really good detail is Alaska. And I didn't overland to get there, but like I flew in and did like a group trip with this really cool group called Outsiders together. And we like spent like a week going through Anchorage and Denali and went down to Seward. And that was like so much fun. Like Alaska was so beautiful. Like the wildlife, the scenery, like it's just like you hear about these people who like want to get lost in Alaska and live off the land, and like you're there and like that energy is so that obviously it's a very wild rural place. You can just feel that energy, like you just want to like scream and like excitement. But I say my favorite place I've probably overlanded today is definitely like the San Juan Mountains of Colorado. They are like labeled as like the little Switzerland of America, and for good reason. Like it's very like I've been to Switzerland. It's very comparable. It's beautiful out there. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, I went there for the first time this year, and that's you take the $1 Million Highway to get there, right?
Yes.
Yes, I went there during the fall foliage, and it was stunning. But yes, I have also been to Switzerland, and I would say, just like what you said, just absolutely stunning. If you haven't been, add it to the top of your bucket list in the U.S. for sure.
Yes, like if you want to go to Switzerland, just go to Colorado instead.
Yeah.
Same difference.
I love that. For sure. Switzerland is so expensive. Like, I think when I remember going there, and you know, you can get a burger here, you know, $12 at a normal restaurant. There it was like $25. Yeah. And that just like set the bar for everything. Everything was like double the cost in Switzerland.
Yeah, like a small coffee. Like I got like a small iced latte, and it was like $10 at least. And I was like, geez.
Yeah, Switzerland definitely has a price tag.
Yeah, but it's gorgeous, but pricey.
Yeah. Do you have any rad adventures planned for 2024 yet?
I do. I mean, yeah, I do. We're going to Alaska in January, and I'm so excited. Catching the Northern Lights, because they're supposed to be like the peak that they've been in 20 years and will be for another 20 years. So I was like, I have to catch them. So we're going to Fairbanks in January to like chase the Northern Lights, and Yosemite's on the list. And I don't know, I'm trying to make it, like actually finally make it to Washington State, but we'll see. That's like a big fingers crossed, but I really hope so.
Those sound like some pretty awesome trips. Will you be going by yourself or in groups?
I always travel with someone. So I don't know. Well, January going to Alaska will definitely be with a group. I have like a group of friends who are all like, this is a great idea. So we're renting a house together and just like piling around Fairbanks for 5 days and seeing what happens. But yeah, typically I travel with someone. unlike my Instagram perceives as like a solo traveler. I can't do it. I like feel so sketched out by like everything. I'm like, I need at least one person there.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of 50-50. I do a lot by myself, and I think that's more just because I've had to in order to get out, and my husband travels a lot for his job, and so we just, if I want to do stuff, it's almost like I have to do it by myself, but I definitely prefer those trips with at least one other person.
Yeah. I mean, I have solo traveled, but like you said, definitely prefer someone else.
It's good to be outdoors alone, but I think, there's also a value added whenever there's another person and you get to experience, and it kind of like hones in those memories a little bit more for me when you get to experience it with someone else.
Oh yeah, for sure, because they become part of the memory, and then they help you remember things. I don't know. It's fun.
Yeah, exactly. So speaking of the outdoors, how does the outdoors play a role in your relationship with Christ?
Kind of a side note, but like on the topic, I feel like a lot of outdoorsy like granola, I say that with quotations, but like granola types aren't Christians, and then people are always surprised when they're like, wait, you're a Christian and you're outdoorsy? Like they act like shocked. And I'm like,
it's like those two things are in polar opposite of each other.
Yeah, and I don't know how. Like how can you go outside and I go to places like the San Juans, or go to places like Mount Rainier, or go to Alaska and not see like God everywhere? Like how can you look at that and be like, yeah, this was random. This wasn't created with specific art love. Like I can't look at it and not see it's like random. Like I feel like getting outside is where I feel the closest, because I could see just the evidence of him everywhere. Like it's like once your eyes are open, it's impossible to not like see it and just like feel it. And so I don't know, the outdoors are like where I kind of go to like disconnect from the world and like really just like reconnect with Christ and myself, and just I don't know, just like be there, be present. And it's nice. I love the outdoors.
I totally agree with you. And I think, whenever the more you study the outdoors and the more you study certain things about, science and the earth and outer space and, how everything is so intertwined. I was an atheist, I'll say agnostic, for about 10 years. And that was really one of the things that was always the thing that held me to like, there might be something out there. Is it's like, there's no way that the way that everything interacts with each other, and there's just such divine structure. And I've heard like if we were 1 more inch closer to the sun, then we would burn. If we were 1 inch further away, we would freeze to death. And it's just like things like that. I'm just not convinced that it was just this giant accident.
No, it's too specific to be an accident, like so specific.
Yeah. And I think if you even think about just like the way that our bodies work, think about the human and how complex we are. Like,
yeah,
it's crazy. Yeah. Anyways. So do you have a specific story or an experience where God has really like revealed himself to you in the outdoors, or a moment where maybe you just felt so close to him that stands out?
Yeah, definitely. Like there's tons of moments, but like one immediately came to mind. I was in Jackson Hole a couple years ago during the winter, just like, checking out the area for the first time. It was beautiful, by the way. So gorgeous. But the whole time I was like, people were like, yeah, you might see a moose. And so I was like, I had this thing where I was like, I really want to see a moose. Like I want to see a moose so bad. And I remember actually praying about it. I was like, God, it'd be cool if I could just see one moose. Just one. I was like, I don't need a lot. I just want to see one. And it was like one of those like, yeah, watch this kind of moments. And I went on a wildlife tour my first morning there, and we saw the most moose that the tour guide had seen all season. We saw like 19 moose, like all around this like one little area. And he's like, this is insane. I've never seen so many. And every time I'd be like the first time we saw one, I was like, it was like a mom and a calf. And I was like, this is great. I'm set. Like, I was like, fine. I was good with life. And then we just kept going, and we kept seeing more and more and more. And then we had this one moment where one was like running across I don't know if you've been to the Tetons, but like in front of the mountains, there's like a big field, right? And this one is just like trotting across the field on its own. And I got this picture of it with the Tetons in the background. And I was just like, I was like on cloud 9. It was such a magical moment. I was like, I know this is you, God. Thanks. It's pretty cool.
What a spectacular place to experience that as well. But yeah,
Yes.
the Tetons are insane, and I love that story because a lot of times we ask for so little, and God just always over delivers.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I read this book called Captivating. I don't know if you've ever read it, but
I've heard a lot about it, but I have not read it just yet.
10 out of 10. I've read it and reread it. I believe in that book so much that in college I bought a copy for every single girl in my hall. Like, I am a big believer in it. It changes it changes so much about how you view the world and like how you view God and like his relationship and his wants with us. But basically in the book it talks about how the world is God's romance to us. Like, God loves us and wants us to know that we're cherished. It's more than just like a set of rules, and like obviously he's our leader, but like it's not like just this foreboding like overviewing perspective. He like loves us individually. And so for me it was one of those moments where I was like, I just want to see one, and then God's like, yeah, I love you more than that. Here's 19 of them. And it was so crazy. It was crazy.
That's amazing. I love those moments where we can just feel God's love for us.
Oh yeah.
And those are going to stick out forever, just like you said.
Yeah.
So I know we talked about, how you get outdoors and how you connect with God through the outdoors, and in some really spectacular places being, these large mountain ranges or the national parks. Do you have any practical ways listeners can start connecting with God through his creation, even if they live in maybe an urban environment?
Yeah. I don't know. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I live in the city is like partially an excuse, because like a little bit, in the sense that, one, you have parks. I know parks are places, and I know that I haven't ever been to a place where I couldn't get to. Like, I travel a lot. Like, I'm in my truck a lot. I'm on the move a lot, and I've been a lot of places, and I've never been to a place that like a city even where you couldn't get somewhere outdoors within like an hour of driving. It just requires doing some research and looking at like what's near you and just kind of making it a bit of a priority. But when I was in college, I lived, it's like a city kind of, it was small, suburban kind of place, but it was pretty sprawled. Like, it was big enough. It had a lot there. And one of the big ways that I would like go connect with God and like just like disconnect from like all the noise of where I was is I would just go drive. Like, there was always these little parks all around, or like downtown, like 15 minutes from the college, there was like a greenway. And even if it was like in the city, I was still kind of like by the river, more so like outside. And I would just go walk or ride my longboard. I mean, I feel like there's stuff wherever you are if you're willing to find it. You have to just prioritize it and like really sit and maybe do a little research about like where you live.
Yeah. Do you have any tips on how to do that research, or apps, or, anything that you've used that might be helpful?
Yeah. Well, like the first thing I'll do is I'll go to Google and I'll be like, I'll type in like the city of like wherever I'm going to be or something near it and be like, blah, 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 outdoors. Or like I'll even go on Pinterest. Pinterest is a really big one because then you get connected with people's personal blogs and you're not just getting fed whatever like the tourism board is telling you on like the Google or like internet search results. It's like you go on Pinterest and you're getting people's personal experiences, and they're more likely to find stuff that's not just like your mainstream, like on the beaten path. But I'll like type out whatever city I am and I'll be like outdoors or hikes or trails or like, something along those lines that helps me get out. And then I can read through stuff and like look for pictures that look interesting and whatever. But I also use a website called Road Trippers, and you can like zoom in. You could go on Road Trippers and they have different sets of like filters so you can see parks near you, near wherever you are on this map, or outdoor attractions or hiking trails or places of interest. And Road Trippers is huge. That's also how I plan like my routes. Like when I'm like, if I'm making a cross country trip, I'll pull it up on Road Trippers and then I'll search along the road to try to find interesting things to stop at on the way. And it like the most random stuff will pop up and I love it. And you can also look for campsites on there. It's a great resource. I recommend it to everybody.
Okay. I've actually never used that, or I think I might have heard of it, but I've actually never used it. And I feel like I'm pretty well versed in a lot of the apps and websites out there. So I might have to give it a look.
It's nice. It's free. You don't have to sign up or anything. You can just go in and just use it. I love it. It's nice. It's helpful.
Yeah. And I think anyone, not living in the West, I think that public land is something that a lot of people don't quite understand. And so even just Googling public land in whatever state you're going to, because in the Midwest or the South, we think of public land as, just parks, or I think most land is owned, by people. And it's like out West, that's a totally different story. And so something to look at if you are traveling anywhere, but specifically kind of west of Colorado, there's a lot more public land than I ever assumed or understood.
Which is like a game changer too, because there's so much like random stuff out there. You could just go wander around and find the coolest stuff, honestly.
Yes, 100%. Like, especially in Utah, there's like the most bizarre things you can find if you just know where to look.
5-year goal is to live in Utah. Utah is like you said, just like diverse. They have everything.
It's one of the most diverse states. From, you have the mountains, you have the desert, you have kind of the best of all worlds. You have world-class skiing, hiking, all of that. But then it also has the most, I believe it's the state with the most public land.
Really?
I believe so.
Oh, dang, I actually didn't know that.
So much of Utah is BLM land.
Dang. That makes it like the place to live.
Yes, definitely. So switching gears just a little bit into the title of this podcast, My Valley, His Victory, I would love for you to share a season of wilderness or a valley that you experienced and kind of what God taught you or prepared you for in that season.
Yeah, semi-controversial, but I feel like I need to talk about it because, I don't know, it's like an aspect of Christianity I guess people don't talk about. But right now I'm actually going through a divorce, which has been, not that any divorce is good, but like it's been messy, and it has affected my daughter a lot. And which is why I'm like recording this from Florida right now. I'm trying to just get her out of the house and like help her as much as I can and be there for her. But it was one of those things where I actually had the feelings like that it was going to head there probably a year ago. And I was kind of trying to push through it and like pray about it a lot. And God actually gave me like a lot of peace surrounding it. The biggest thing that like gave me peace with this is I stumbled across a verse. It's Luke 12:27. And basically it talks about how the wildflowers grow and don't need the approval of how they grow. Like they don't need people to approve of the way in which they're growing. And I felt that so hardcore because I spent so much of my life looking for people's approval and like making decisions based on if I thought other people would agree with them. And like rather than like trusting my own journey and trusting my own gut feelings, and also aligning myself with people who didn't judge me even if I made decisions that might be questionable. And so I related to it a lot and was like, well, I know this is gonna be a questionable decision, but I also know, like, I won't go into detail, but I know the reasons why I felt like I needed to do this. I know why I chose to do it, and I still think in the long term it will always be the right decision. And I think that God has like provided so many good things out of something that's typically viewed as bad. Like I feel he's been really guiding me and like there for me through it all, and I've been able to connect so much more in like the outdoor community and just even like making connections like with like friends or future friends, or like just all of it has been really, really good in such a strange, unexpected way.
Yeah. Maybe for context, you could give us just a little bit of information just about how it started and how maybe God was either in or not in this marriage that you were in.
Yeah, when I met him, I'll say I was healing from a really, really bad relationship. I think I fell into it because he, at the time, was this very like positive light. He seemed very positive and seemed very uplifting, and I was just really broken, and I was like in a place where I needed that. And as time went on, there were certain things that just weren't healthy. It wasn't healthy. It was, honest to gosh, really, really unhealthy. And it hit a point where like we had done some counseling, we'd done like consulting with people, we'd tried to like talk about it, we'd try to work things out, and I could see that it was just going to continue spiraling. And I was starting to watch my daughter's behaviors, like watching the ways she would talk to people or talk to the dog or like mimic things that she was seeing or hearing. it was something I just really, really prayed like very intensely about for probably a good 6 months before I really, really felt that it was like fully and completely that it was what needed to be happening.
Yeah. As you were saying that about you were going through a dark time and he was a light in that season, it reminded me of, and I don't know where it is in the Bible, but talks about, how the enemy can sometimes masquerade himself as an angel of light.
Yes.
And so I think that I'm just, listening and taking what you're saying, but it's almost like that light may have distracted you from pursuing God's light.
Yes.
And, I think that it's, I don't want to speak for you, but important that we confirm, whether or not it's truly God or whether it's a distraction.
Yeah. No, that's a great way. That's a phenomenal way of putting it, and very, very relevant to the situation.
Yeah. So can you walk us through just a little bit of, how you walked through this season and just how you came to find that peace to make this decision?
Yeah. So I think it was probably about this time last year. And it's like, everything with God's always random. Everything's always like, oh, that was random, but it's not. Like, obviously there's like a method, there's a reason, there's a plan, purpose, but it was random. And so my brother's now fiance, but at the time girlfriend, was like up around Christmas time last year, and she was reading this book, and it was called Find Your People. And I don't, like, if you haven't read it, it's a book about like creating lasting, ongoing relationships, and like why modern society struggles to have these like deep, meaningful relationships and how we can recover them. And she was talking about it, and I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And then like a month or two later, I bought the book. And at that point, I had been really isolated, like from my friends. I wasn't seeing them a lot. I wasn't around my people a lot. And I was at a point where I was like, I really like want some community in my life. Like I need some positivity because there was also like just stuff going on at home. And so I started reading this book. In that book, basically it says, if you don't have a fire pit, get a fire pit, because fire pits are like the communal hub, even back in like prehistoric days, right? Everyone would gather around the fire after hunting all day, the Indians or whatever, like they'd come back and they'd sit around the campfire. And I was like, huh, that's interesting. So I got a fire pit. And I just started inviting like random people that like I hadn't talked to since high school, or like, randomly would meet at like a truck meet or whatever. I'd be like, want to come over for a fire? And so I started kind of establishing this community. And the more that I was like having this community, and the more I was around like these really like healthy, genuine people, the more I was realizing that the situation I was in was not healthy and not good. And I was like, okay, like it was very eye-opening. It was very eye-opening. And it also opened my eyes to like things I was doing with like my friendships and relationships, like selfish tendencies that I was not aware of because I hadn't had positive relationships like I did until this year. And like having that ultimately, like I've kind of already said, like I ended up having that feeling about a year ago, and like really like pushing through and praying, but having that community and like seeing these healthy patterns showed me like just how deep unhealthy what I was in was. And like that's also what got me through everything, is like having that community and like taking the time, all because I just read this book, and it's a really simple book. Like it's not these complex ideas and concepts. It's like get a fire pit and ask people questions, like, care about people, and also be unafraid to like accept help, because that's like how people want to love you. And like implementing those things has like helped me so much. And I still have these relationships now because of all of it. And thank God for my friendships, because it's been keeping me like sane, and like it's grounding me and reminding me. And thankfully I have friends now too who are unafraid to be like, you're doing this wrong, or like you need to be held accountable for this, and like helping me to be a better person as well. It's been a game changer having like a community. And I think a community is what people need, like single, in a relationship, out of a relationship, married, like whatever your relationship status is, you need that communication. Like that's how God intended us to live.
Yeah, 100%. I can relate to that on a lot of levels, because before I got married, I was, also in a really terrible relationship. And it's crazy how when we need people the most, in those bad situations is actually like the furthest that we are from the people that love us. And we just kind of push those people away. And when in reality, like we really do need that sounding board of like, you're not the same person. You are isolating us for a reason. And it's because you know that you're shameful about something that's going on in your life. And so I think a lot of times if we can show up with that shame and, share it with someone, it's almost like it lets go of its hold on us in a way as well.
Yes, for sure.
I thought it was funny that you mentioned, that you go and you buy a fire pit and that you like that's the concept of the book, because actually as I was contemplating names for this podcast, I, love the idea of like the porch and the basement, which are awesome podcasts, but the idea, is that you're just talking in conversation, you're being vulnerable, you're sharing things like you would if you're sitting with someone at on a porch or, in your basement, just having a natural conversation. And one of the things that I thought about when I was naming this podcast was something around the thought of like a campfire, because the outdoors and, sharing our faith and sharing our stories. But so I thought that was really funny that that's the premise of the book, is like, go buy a fire pit.
It was like, you need a fire. It's a fire table, fire pit. Go get a fire pit. Go get something with fire.
I love that, because it's so true. Like whenever you're around community, and I don't know what it is about a fire pit, but I feel like I have some of my best memories, like just sitting around a fire pit, hanging out, sharing stories, talking life. I don't know. It's just it takes the pressure off of the conversation for some reason.
Yeah, it does. It dates back to like, that's what the book was talking about. Like it dates back to like, think about like cavemen or like, even biblical times. Like people are out in the wilderness, they're bonding at night around a fire. It's like, why not implement that modernly? And it's, I don't know, get a fire pit.
If you take anything from this podcast, go buy a fire pit.
Solo stove makes it easy. Smokeless fire pit.
So if you could wrap up, kind of what you learned or what you're learning, it sounds like as you're going through this valley, what is really just the one thing that God has been speaking into your life and showing you during this time?
Learning to let people help you, like accepting help, because as much as you want to like do it yourself, denying letting other people help you is denying their want to love on you. And the same way, because it's the same thing about it, when other people are in need and you want to help them, that's exactly what they're feeling. And also, we're not meant to go through life alone. Like we're meant to go through this with like genuine, caring community. And sometimes love is harsh. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's, hearing things that you don't want to hear. But letting people help you and making sure you do the same for them when the time comes has been like a big thing, because I'm not good at accepting people's help. Like I've had friends be like, can we send you money? Can we buy you groceries? And my first reaction is to be like, no. But then I'm like, but if they were going through this and if I wanted to do this, I would want them to say yes. Like I'd want to be able to help them, because that's like me getting to love on them. And like God intended us, like I said, to have community. So if people want to help, let them, because oftentimes it's them wanting to love you, and which is indirectly, but also directly, God loving you through other people.
Yeah. And I think, whenever we get to that place of actually owning that we need help, I think that's really when God has the ability to have the power to come through and show up, because, the Bible says like in our weakness, he is strong. And it's like, we have to accept that we're weak and that we do need help and that we cannot do it all alone.
Yes. Humility.
Yes, for sure. And, also taking other people's help, because sometimes I think we pray like, God help us. And then someone calls us and offers help and we're like, don't take it. And then God's like,
yeah,
I offered you an olive branch and you denied it. So why are you still praying? The same thing.
Exactly. You have to have your eyes open to it and your heart open, and humility.
So can you give the listeners any real life advice of what that looks like, asking for help and being vulnerable and kind of owning that need?
Yeah. I guess through like general examples is like through this, I've been living in a house on my own and that kind of stuff. And like learning to be like, hey, for some reason I'm feeling uncomfortable. Can someone come over and just like sleep on the couch just so someone else is here? Or I've had people like want to buy me groceries or like want to give me money and like, I don't know. God, it's like, it's tricky because like you have to like go against, I don't know, you just have to like hit the override button, honestly. Like you just have to be like, this isn't like, yes, it's about me, but it's not about me. And being willing to just like go, you know what, I probably do need help. You know what, I'm going through a lot and these people want to make sure I don't have to think about one little thing. And letting people take off that one little thing, knowing that eventually you'll be able to return the favor. Because, I mean, any long-term relationship, both sides are going to have up and down. Like friendships, relationships, whatever. Like both sides are going to have up and downs. Let people help you now, and then you'll get to help them later. Like it's how community works.
Very true. I think that a lot of people, think relationships should be like 50-50. And it's like, really, a lot of times it's seasons. Like, it's like, I'm have 0 and you're going to have to bring, your 100%. Yeah. And then there's going to be seasons where, I get really, really fed up with, this, well, I did this for this person and they didn't do the same thing for me. It's like
keeping tabs.
You can't do that. And like you said, it may not happen this year. It may not happen in the next 5 years, but you may be able to return that favor back in the future, but it doesn't have to be immediate. And it doesn't have to be, well, I did this, and so I'm waiting for them to do this before I do this again.
No, it's not tabs. It's doing it with like a genuine, like humble, loving heart. Like that's the heart of Christ. Like God, like Christ didn't get up on a cross and die and then be like, keep it tabs, your turn. He's like, please, he's like, seriously, just please, like, love me. Like, it's so simple. Just love me. And like, that's how it should be. There's no running running list.
Amen. Those are the friendships that are not true friendships. Hate to break it to you.
Drop those. Goodbye.
So as we wrap up, I just would love to leave the listeners with a piece of advice or encouragement. If, maybe someone is in the exact same season that you were in a year ago, or maybe going through the same thing right now, going through a divorce, just what would you leave them with, or what encouragement would you give them?
Talk to someone. Even if you only have one person in your life that like you're confiding in, you need someone. Like it all roots back to community. Like I couldn't imagine going through this without at least, like thankfully I have a lot of people who've really been there for me, but like I couldn't imagine going through the season without at least one person. And oftentimes, like, sure, you can like act depressed and wait on someone to ask you, but like, I don't know, don't do that. Like you don't have to do it that way. Just reach out to someone. Like I wish I had started talking about certain things that were going on in the relationship long before I finally did. Like I wish I had reached out, like even if it was just to one person, like I wish I had just told someone. So like the biggest advice I could literally offer is if you have one friend, one cousin, one grandparent, one parent, like what, one sibling, whatever, just talk to one person about what you're feeling, because they'll either give you perspective and tell you you're being dumb, or they'll go, why didn't you tell me sooner? How can I help you? And then you're not alone anymore. Like it's one of the two. Like you'll either get accountability or you'll get help. You just don't do it alone.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable. And I think that when you are in a relationship or a situation that is very unhealthy and maybe borderline, if not over borderline abusive, we feel like they're the only ones. And if we make them the only one, then we're giving them that power as well. And so I think that you have to combat that power with something else. And like we said, we isolate in those situations, but I think that's one of the worst things you can do, because then you're giving that person all of the power. Well, thanks so much for being with us today, Taylor. I really loved getting to learn just a little bit about you and about your experience. And I just thank you so much for sharing and being willing to be vulnerable and talking about something that, you feel like is controversial in the church. I'm all here for those topics. And I think the church is a place where we should be loved and a place where we should be accepted despite, we're all sinners and we're all going to have things that we fall short of the glory of God, but we need to feel loved and we need to feel like we're a part of that thing. And so I want to open, this to all of those kinds of conversations. And so for our listeners who maybe want to follow along with you post-show, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram at Tay Wanders. I have a YouTube, but I don't upload very often, so just keep up with Instagram for now.
Maybe one day.
Yeah, maybe one day.
And you are a part of some big event next year, right?
Kind of. I'm supposed to be going to Africa for doing a group trip to Africa. We're supposed to be climbing Kilimanjaro and doing a 5-day safari, which is going to be like huge. I'm excited about it. I'm pretty stoked. It'll be like a great opportunity for outdoor enthusiasts to like go knock off the largest freestanding mountain in the world and climb it. And we're doing the Lemosho route, which has the highest success rate. So basically everyone who shows up is almost guaranteed to make it to the top. And doing a safari, which like I'm pretty sure is on most people's bucket list.
And then you're also going to be at some overlanding event next year, right? As well?
Yes. Yeah. I'm teaching at an event in the spring. It's called Adventure Vehicle Roundup. It's in North Georgia. But I'll be teaching classes, and there are other classes there too. It's like a miniature overland expo, basically. So basically you can go and learn about like outdoors, overlanding, camping, first aid, all kinds of different topics. And yeah, it's a cool event. It's a cool event. I went to their fall event this last year, and they asked me to come back and teach again. So I'll be hanging out there. Excited.
I love that. Yeah, so go travel with Tay to Africa and go catch her on the Overlanding Expo or Miniature Overlanding Expo in North Georgia. Well, thanks so much for being on today, Taylor.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode of My Valley, His Victory. If you or someone you know are interested in being on this podcast, please email myvalleyhisvictory@gmail.com.